This is the last session for the two-day conference. So I am literally between you and drinks. So we're going to get right into it. And let's introduce our first speaker, Juhn from Common Ground. And then we'll bring on JustCo, Sing. And we'll bring on Carlson from COCOWORK. Yes. All right, so you have the two mics there, and also for you to really start off with your battle, we have to make sure that everyone is prepared, right? And for everyone to know what's happening for this last session, we're making it a little bit more fun, a little bit more interactive. It is actually a battlefield. The battle mainly is firstly between the traditional spaces of work, so offices, versus co-working spaces that you see up front here. But what's going to be important here for you to really kind of get excited is that the audience today is going to see who actually wins the battle. So we're going to have three small battles between pricing, the community aspect, even vision. At the end of each of the battle, you will all get to vote. Who wins? Is it the co-working spaces or is it traditional offices? So without further ado, we're going to first let everyone introduce themselves for a 1-minute pitch. I've been told I have to time this, so it's going to be a exactly 1-minute pitch. I'm going to cut you off, and you can say anything you want about your spaces, about how you're really changing the game about traditional offices, but you're really changing it with co-working spaces, and how you do that differently. So let me just set the timer, because this is very, very specifically timed. Okay. We're going to start with 1 minute, and are you okay to start with Common Ground? All right, let's start now.
Thanks, Fran. I think to discuss the differences between traditional office space and co-working spaces, I think we could talk about this all afternoon. But to really zero in on what I think most of us would feel is the essential difference, is this buzzword that you always hear in co-working circles, and that is community, and how that's defined and what we think of community as, I think probably varies from space to space. I think in terms of what is a unique offering, I haven't come across an idea that's truly unique to any co-working space. I think what is unique is in how you execute that element of community. Just from Common Ground's perspective, what we generally do in terms of focusing on how to harness that community is a number of ways. One is events. We curate the events very much at each venue, and there's not one Common Ground on any particular day that doesn't have an event going on there at some point, whether it be business or aspirational or lifestyle. Right. I think partnership as well is a big thing. We bring a lot of extra offerings to that membership, whether it be free tax advice from a tax partner or something like a free health membership. Yeah. All the way to service. We're very service oriented, and I know my time's up, so I'll probably move it on.
But good to know. Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the next 1-minute pitch.
Thanks. But anyway, before I begin, do we look like a battlefield? I don't figure it. Okay, anyway, in my view, the last 3 over years, a lot of people ask me what exactly is this co-working space? Is it a bunch of young startup companies are sitting in an open space with a table, where you can see what I'm doing, what you are doing, things like that. So to me, co-working space is disrupting the commercial real estate market. So what do I mean by that? Disrupting is a big word. I see you have a voting at the previous session on all the startup disrupting. So I shared with Juhn earlier this afternoon, disrupting, what do I mean? We have the traditional landlord at one side who is very good at building a sexy buildings, in the last 100 years, I built space. To us, space is a commodity in today's market. And in the last 100 years, we have all the tenants, they need a space. The relationship is very direct from the tenant to the landlord. I need a space, I talk to the tenant, I enter in the contract, negotiate for a couple months, and I get a contractor to fit out the space, I get a space. So that relationship has been there for the last 100 years, but it's changing. What do I mean by the disrupting? So between this relationship, co-working is coming in between. A lot of all these enterprises who need a space, today they are telling the landlord, I still want to be in your space, but I don't want to enter the contract with you. I want to be housed under the co-working space that's within your space. So I think there are a lot of landlords over here right now. I'm not your competitor, don't hate me. I'm your partners. What I'm telling you today is that a lot of these customers, they still want to be in your space. Just that they don't want to enter the relationship with you. They want to be under the relationship with us, and we need you to build a space. So this is what we mean by disrupting the commercial real estate market. So how do we do that? Why people want to do that? I think I got 15 more seconds, right?
Yeah.
Okay, one is flexibility, second is community. I think I can elaborate more later on. Okay, thanks.
So I think that, firstly, that's actually a great way to introduce this because it's almost redefining that battle definition. It's not really a battle now, you're saying. It's actually, you're almost repackaging what they're selling, but in a different way to be more relevant to the users that just genuinely want to actually be in that building. So it's not really a battle, but how can you be partners? Let's move on to the last one then for now.
Hey everyone, my name is Carlson. I'm a part of this company called COCOWORK, previously known as EV Hive. It actually gives me great pleasure to be here today because I look at the audience and I see a lot of young faces. And actually that's the dream, right? We started in 2015 with a dream that regardless of whether you're an individual or freelancer or single man startup company, you can get same access to the kind of services that a large corporate can get access to. And that's the mission that drove us, which is essentially to build an ecosystem where companies and individuals can start and grow their business. So today we operate 21 locations within Indonesia itself, and we have plans to double the amount of footprint within the next year. And that's because we have a core market group, which is small businesses. These are the small businesses that, through our platform, gain access to affordable workspaces, but also, more importantly, services that can help you grow your company. And I think that's a powerful idea, which is going through a single player like ours. We can pull together resources, we can pull together mind share to help you with respect to growing your business. And I think that's whether we disrupt the commercial space or not in the process, or whether we go ahead and redefine how people think of workspaces or not, I think in our mind that's secondary. Because whenever we work within our company, we think of the member, the perspective of the member to start with. And so because of that, like in a forum like this, I'm really excited to share with you the thoughts on this business. And hopefully in future, through a platform like a co-working space, you can join and realize your dreams of building your own business.
Thanks, Carlson. So I think one thing that you've also just mentioned is even the footprint that you do, and beyond that as well, serving the members really truly in the value that you do. And what's unique about these three speakers today is that they are actually the largest footprint in each of their countries. They all have the largest number of outlets, if that's what you call it, or offices in each of their countries. So they're really the leaders in this space at the moment, disrupting or partnering to change up the way people kind of work. So with the first battle, and I guess the first topic that we're battling out with the traditional offices, and would love to kind of hear a lot more about that whole partnership instead of battle that you're saying. It's firstly about costs, and we're going to get straight into what everyone always worries or thinks about before you even choose who to work or who to rent from. Well, how much does it really cost on a per square foot? And that's usually the straight away, the first question someone will ask. And traditionally, everyone in this room always kind of had the perspective to say, well, co-working spaces are kind of expensive on a per square foot basis if you think about it. And I can go rent a place for 2,000 ringgit in PJ and it's much cheaper, for example. So there's always this battle of firstly price, right? So, and without even answering that battle, you can't even go on to the second or third questions that usually your members are asking, right? So let's hit the first battle first about price, about the cost that people are putting in their minds. And if we could just have the Slido question up, because this will be the question that we will be asking everyone in the audience to vote in terms of who ultimately wins and does that answer. So as you guys answer, you guys can think about the question and who really wins this battle. But I'd love to hear from each one of you how you guys are tackling that cost question, that price, and how is it unique in your own countries?
Well, in Malaysia, a lot of our tenants are spoilt for choice, obviously, with a lot of cheap real estate. There's a lot of shop lots that can go for $1.50 a square foot. What we normally tell prospective members is that, look, if your business is one that needs to be in a grade A office building and it's an aspirational product, if you're client-facing, if you're having meetings with clients and you want to impress them, you need to be in a good space. To be in a grade A office building or a good corporate setting, and to fit it out according to how you would like a good designed office to be, you add in your operating costs of internet and then the furniture and everything else. If you were to look at that versus what we offer over the course of 3 years, we continually demonstrate to these companies that are generally less than 12 people that you will save between 20 to 30% based on the same real estate. I think if it gets down to the point of just being purely cost, we can never win against a shop lot, especially one that a company is willing to just use it for its utilitarian needs for real estate and fit it out in a very basic way. There's no way we can win against that. But I think the changing face of workspace needs these days has given us that opportunity to be able to pass these savings down. A lot of that happens through economies of scale, obviously. We're buying everything in bulk. We're buying furniture, the carpet, all the way down to the coffee beans. So for us to manage that space for someone, it's always going to be a bit cheaper than what they can do it for themselves.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that a lot of people don't actually go through when they make that decision, that on top of rental, they have to buy the coffee beans, they have to fit out, they have to do that furniture, and they have to even manage maintenance and repairs, right? And all these small costs do really add up, right? What about the others?
I'll go first. Okay, I'll tackle this question from the angle more indirectly from flexibility. It's also linked to the cost. I have two groups of customers, big corporation and SMEs, and to a lesser extent startups. So they used to be occupying the space from the traditional offices. For example, big corporations. One of the very classic example is a GE from Bangkok. They occupy about 5 floors on their HQ in Bangkok. But technology is changing the way they are working. 5 floors, but anytime you step into their office, 50% of the time is empty. Why? People are working everywhere. Technology is enabling that. I can go out to have a meeting with whoever. I don't need to go back to the office because I can work out from my iPad, I can work out from my iPhone, and I can have a phone call through my iPad because the speed of the internet is so fast. That's changing the behavior. So the real estate people is thinking, 50% of the space is not being occupied, but can I release back to the landlord? They're not willing to do that because why? They don't know what's going to happen 6 months down the road because the economic cycle has become so unpredictable nowadays. And if they need a space 6 months down the road, they don't have the flexibility and they can't tell their boss, you have to wait for another 6 months to acquire back the space before I can launch a new product. So flexibility is a key thing. And they are moving to a co-working space. Can you imagine a HQ of GE, a Fortune 500 company? They are moving into a co-working space. And 5 floors, they reduce to half of it, 2.5 floors. And what happens to the other 2.5 floors? Every day, they are not using it. It's always empty. So whenever they need it, they can go to various co-working space as and when on an ad hoc basis. But if they need to increase the size, they just call us up. We can give them the additional space. So if you ask me from this angle, whether they are saving money, they are 100% saving a lot of money. But the key thing is really about the flexibility.
If I could even just add to that, if I'm not mistaken, Common Ground, or maybe the others, please jump in. If you have a hot desk in one of your countries, but you want to go to, let's say right now you're in Philippines, right? Then you can also straight away use the hot desk in the Philippines without even having to pay anything extra. Is that right?
That's right.
Right. So even the flexibility that you just mentioned goes beyond in terms of scaling to 2 floors, 5 floors to 2 floors, but it means scaling from geographies to geographies, not even increasing a single cent, but being able to work out of the office in the other country, which is amazing if you think about that, right? So what about you?
So I think we always start with our core community, right, which is the small businesses. And today we charge about $120 per member, which is like 50% below, even on a comparable square meter basis, if you were to rent it yourself. And I think that's the core of our calling, right, which is how do we as a company utilize the scale of our business and technology to compress the fit-out costs, to compress our operating costs, and pass on the cost savings to each and every one of you here. And I think that's the benefit on just a physical space. But imagine you paying $120, you get access to almost like country club membership. You get to hop into any one of our spaces. You get to plug into our business community. You get access to all our business services. And so from that perspective, it becomes super, super affordable, right, for all our small businesses, which I think that's something that's very powerful within our space itself. And I think what we wanted to do was to replicate the same thing, right, across the whole country. So I think cost is one thing, but I think gaining access to services is something that's even more important. I think because previously I had my own company before, I knew that it's actually very hard to talk to a banker. It's very hard to talk to an insurance agent. Right? You go to them, you tell them, oh, I only have a 5% company. And they're like, okay, wait till you grow into a 50% company before I think about corporate cover, right, for someone like you. But now through our platform, right, you get access to this kind of services. You get the attention that you need. So I think that's how we think about it when we architect our entire business, to be able to make it accessible for each and every one of you.
All right. So we've now heard that it's more than just that cost for rental. You're even incurring the additional admin costs and fit out. That's the value that you're bringing. 2, the flexibility. And 3, all the additional services that you're really gaining access to. And these are all value in itself. So if we could just have the first battle up, and that's Slido question. Do you as the audience believe that genuinely co-working spaces do work out to be cheaper or more value than traditional working spaces? While we wait for that Slido, we'll go to the second topic, just because I know we're tight on time. And you guys can continue to vote throughout the second topic that we're going to go through, so that I give you some time. Just put in your vote, absorb what they've just said, and let's see who wins this battle. Let's move on to the second one. The second one is about that software aspect. All the times when I hear about co-working spaces, they're talking about these services, these memberships, these extra networking, community aspects. All right, how do you each really actually drive this? Does this actually happen in your spaces? As a Malaysian, I know like some Malaysians here just don't even go across to the other side of the room and introduce themselves. And we work across each other for like a whole year. All right, so does it really happen? Do you actually measure this also as your KPI or as a value that you think really needs to be tracked? And can you just share a little bit more of that? Yeah.
So what we firmly believe is that this culture and community isn't a fad or a hoax. I think a lot of companies have said to us, even well after moving to Common Ground, that they're sticking around because of that culture. I think a lot of companies want to be innovative, but they don't know how to become innovative until they come into a space like ours or like these guys and really absorb that startup vibrancy. How we track that, we use technology quite a lot now to track that. We just launched an app a couple of months ago. We collect a lot of data from it in terms of how people like or view or comment on certain aspects of how we run the space. For instance, the events or the partnerships. We get a lot of feedback through that app in terms of what works and what doesn't work. We're constantly surveying our members on a quarterly basis, keeping track of all the scores across all the venues. We use a Net Promoter Score system to figure out what are the 10 main things that people like or dislike about our space. And it's a learning process. We've only been doing this for over a year, but we get a lot of feedback in these quarterly surveys, and we keep fine-tuning the product based on the feedback.
Mm-hmm. All right. And how about JustCo or COCOWORK? Do you guys track these as well, just like what they do?
We think of community quite scientifically, because community gets thrown around quite often, right? It's a very amorphous, like a word that is nebulous, right? The way we think about it is actually in 2 parts. So one is community for the founders, and community for their employees. And so the kind of activities that we organize in each one of them is quite different. For the founders, it's very business driven, right? So we have our almost like our own internal business associations for different industry verticals. And there'll be like frequent meetups, frequent luncheons that we organize for them to get to know one another. So I think that's the business aspect of things. And for the employees, actually, it tends to be a bit more social. So we organize like things like yoga classes, football sessions, sometimes even like game nights. And I think those are the things that keep the employees happy. And essentially, we perform almost a HR function for the companies that join our space. And I think that's magical, right? When we start thinking and architecting the business in these two different buckets. Because then we become more focused, right? In terms of thinking what kind of community we can create within each of the verticals that we have started to push forward on.
So what's interesting is you both of you actually structurally frame how to tackle that community aspect. You actually break it down, you even measure it on certain KPIs or you track members. So this is something that's actually taken very seriously in your operations and how you run, right? Have you seen actual benefits that have come out genuinely from, like, let's say a member that said, oh wow, I've actually just grown my business 5 times because of this?
I think a lot of times so actually the first bit on the business side of things, we track it in terms of like employee growth, right? We track it in terms of funding received. The second side is a bit more psychological, right? Which is employee satisfaction. And we track it essentially by the amount of extensions, right, that our members apply for. So in terms of the retention rate, in terms of them going out and actively saying, okay, I actually want to sign up for a longer term with you guys. So in that way, we structure it quite metrics driven.
Right, so very similar to even the Net Promoter Score, right? Like how you actually show what they're really loving about your space, right? Well, so in this battle, it's the question of whether or not we truly believe that co-working spaces do deliver on this aspect, which is community, on this softest part of building relationships that you would never actually have had. Is there anything else you would also like to add in terms of how JustCo does this?
I get asked about this question almost every day. Even my shareholders, even they invested in me, they keep asking me, what exactly is this a community? Can you make money? So, okay, I think new way of working, the way we change, the new way of working is really about the community. Flexibility is something that we can feel it because, when you save $1, it's a save $1, so we can talk about the flexibility. But community, is it something that we can really feel it? Can we make money? I'll be very frank with you, I think until today, nobody can say that they can make money from the community. But to curate the right community, you need a lot of data. So it's our vision, and we really think that community will work. To answer your question that whether we see the genuine benefit from our members today, the answer is yes. I personally witnessed some of our members, when I talk to them, they said that by coming to the co-working space, they actually benefit. One good example, Mobile is one of my members. They started with us with only 2 members. Within 6 months, 2 members, they grow to about 50 members. I don't need to talk to the co-founders or the founders. I just need to talk to the managers. How do you manage 2 members to 50 members? That experience is very, very invaluable. You can't share that. You can't find people who can share that through internet. The most you can do is you go to Google, who can share this kind of experience with me, then there are a bunch of results and nobody you can talk to, a lot of things you can read. But through the co-working space, a lot of companies, a lot of office managers, they face this kind of problem, but we run a lot of program, we retrieve the data, we know that what type of company you are at, and we think that you might need this kind of advice. So we organize the sharing session. We just invite the mobile office manager to share with the other members. They told me that, great, I know, we should do this, we should do that. When you grow triple times within a month, what should you do? What kind of KPI should you set for your new recruit? How are you going to find the new people? So immediately I feel that it's benefiting. So how do we do that? Data is very important. So if we don't have a big pool of data, there's no way we can curate this kind of community. So our vision is we want to grow as fast as we can and to acquire as many data, which is the members. I know that you guys hate me to say that you are the data, but anyway, so to acquire as many membership as we can across Asia, so that we can curate the best community we can. And after you get a community, I think the money part will come.
That's so great to hear, right? Because if you think about this topic specifically about rental, about renting from even traditionally developers, or if you talk about the landlords, you would never, in I guess like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, ever say like, yeah, my landlord actually, really has my interest in mind, my problems, understands my, tracks me, and then also is able to kind of advise me on how I can scale, right? And that's something you're saying that's actually where you guys are moving towards, where the new version of landlords, co-working spaces, are going to even provide that extra value add to help you at that certain stage in growth. And that's so different to what a landlord would be, right? So that's really, really changing it up. So in that sense, let's firstly see how our first battle went, and then we'll go to our second battle in terms of whether community really, really helped out. Is Slido working? Can you guys see Slido in your phone? All right, whoa. Okay, so can co-working spaces truly build a sense of community? This is the second question, actually. So, whoa, it's really, okay, wow. That has changed in 2 seconds. So we have 70% of people saying yes, definitely, with the data, with the matrix, with the frameworks you're all doing. This is really changing the way that sense of community is really brought forward to the members. And around 17% are saying we'll see, and 9% is actually not really. So it's a clear battle won on the co-working spaces versus traditional spaces. Do we have the results from the first battle? All right, okay, so the first battle was which one is more affordable and better value for your dollar spend, and 72% actually agree that the co-working spaces really do win on this value provision and not the traditional offices. So that's a huge, huge, huge gap, actually. Already it's pretty clear that co-working spaces...
For the 7%, I'd love to invite you to my spaces to experience it. So I hope to change your mind.
Yeah.
For free.
And that's exactly it, right? So it's pretty clear that in 2018, when we're having this conversation at Wall Digital this year, the audience already knows it and believes it, right? That co-working spaces are changing the game in many aspects. You can see that on a very fundamental value system, and also now on a community level as well. These two are so, so important. So thank you. Our time is actually up. We didn't even get our time to go to our last battle. But I know the next stop for everyone is actually the after party, so we will not hold everyone against that. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And hope everyone had a good time at Wall Digital this year.
Co-working space battlefield, ladies and gentlemen. Common ground, JustCo, COCOWORK. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, a nice warm round of applause for Francesca, Chia.